So apparently due process has been downgraded to like optional now. No charges, no trial. It's just he's got a tattoo we don't like, so let's send him to a maximum security prison in Salvador. Look what happens when a Republican congressman goes on CNN and tries to defend this nonsense.
You've expressed concern about presidents of both parties having too much power in the executive branch. When you hear the president and his top officials suggest that they could simply ignore the court orders here from this federal judge, do you think that is an example of the executive branch overstepping its authority?
No, in this case, I think it's been very clear. There has been a process. You can say it's not due process, but actually he has appealed his deportation. He lost that appeal. He was going to be deported. Whether he should have gone to El Salvador or not is really the one a question. But when it comes to the due process, he did have due process, and he appealed it, and he still lost that. He was deported, perhaps to El Salvador by mistake.
Right. He didn't have due process.
What do you consider due process?
Well, he didn't go before a judge before he was taken off the street and then sent to a mega prison in El Salvador.
You just said there has been a process, but not due process. What? The whole point is it's due process. You can't just say we had a process. We had a process. We decided he's guilty, so we sent him out. That's a process. That's not due process. He's playing mental gymnastics here, folks. Watch Jessica Tarlov on Fox explain a little better.
Getting that hot mic moment where Donald Trump and the El Salvadorian president are talking, they're kind of loitering around at the front of the Oval Office, where they're joking about like, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could take our homegrown ones? You cannot legally send Americans to an El Salvadorian prison camp, no matter what they have done. Senator Kennedy was on our air earlier this afternoon with Sandra and John and said as much. But what is most important is that under the Alien Enemies Act, you deserve due process. And that's what the Supreme Court ruled. And if you go back to World War II, when we were invoking this same act, that people who were here undocumented from Japan, from Germany, from Italy, were allowed to go into a court where they could argue that they weren't a danger to this nation.
There she is on Fox breaking it down. First of all, you cannot deport an American citizen to an El Salvadoran prison, which is what Donald Trump implied and he wants to do, and he said he's looking into it. And secondly, they're looking at the Aliens Enemies Act, which was the act where they put Japanese people in internment camps during World War II, one of the darkest moments in our history, and that's their defense. And here's Pam Bondi sticking to her guns.
It appears that there's not going to be any sort of trial. He's not going to come back. DHS said he would be arrested and redeported if he comes back. Why not show the American people the evidence that he's MS-13 so they can make an informed decision?
President Bukele said he was not sending him back. That's the end of the story. If he wanted to send him back, we would give him a plane ride back. There was no situation ever where he was going to stay in this country. None. He would have come back, had one extra step of paperwork, and gone back again. But he's from El Salvador, he's in El Salvador, and that's where the president plans on keeping him.
The evidence, we're not going to see the evidence?
We have the transcripts from the court hearings. I'll be glad to give you the court hearings from 2019, what we have, sure, with the rulings from the judges, gladly.
That's our attorney general saying, we got the evidence and we'll show it to you, but we're not going to show it to you. What evidence? You don't have any evidence. He did not get due process. You're just making things up, and your Congress people are paying for it.
And we would like to know what you, as the people, the Congress, who are supposed to rein in this dictator, what are you going to do about it? These people have been sentenced to life imprisonment in a foreign country with no due process. Our government cannot do anything. Don't listen to kids. Why won't you do your job, Senator?
Yeah. It's fine. Obeying the Supreme Court. Trump's not obeying the Supreme Court.
I never thought it would warm my heart to see a 92-year-old man get yelled at as much as I just watched Chuck Grassley get yelled at and enjoyed him being yelled at, because the Republicans are just sitting by quietly, letting Trump get away with it. And we all know this is dictatorship 101. That's what they're doing. Here's another breakdown.
The President of the United States of America was at war with the Constitution and the rule of law. So all of us could have predicted that this day would come. The president has been taunting the federal judiciary and even the Supreme Court of the United States for several months now, all but saying loud and clear that there would come a time when he would defy, first, the orders of the lower federal courts, and then ultimately an order of the United States Supreme Court. And today, he has done exactly that.
The President of the United States is at war with the Constitution and the rule of law. Guys, this is the highest alert moment. This is DEFCON 1, okay? Nobody is safe. They can do and are doing whatever they want to do. Let's analyze this. Let's go back to the campaign when Donald Trump was saying, I'm going to deport undocumented immigrants. I'm going to send them away. Anyone who's got a criminal record is going to be sent away. And a lot of his followers, well, that makes sense. Let's get rid of the criminals. All right, all right. Then once he comes into power, they give an actual quota to ICE of people that they want to deport, number of people that need to be deported every day. So ICE is now going after people that have not committed crimes and sending them away. And then we end up in a situation where they went after people like that Mahmoud Khalil, who is a legal resident. He's got his green card, and they didn't like what he said because he criticized the war in Gaza. So therefore, they disappeared him and sent him to Louisiana. Now we're in this situation where they've got this other man who was in Maryland, and they said that, oh, because he had a tattoo and a hat, he had a Bulls hat on, that they had an informant at some point who had said that he's a member of MS-13 in somewhere in New York, but the guy's never been to that part of the country. And so they mistakenly put this guy in with these other people that were criminals, and they sent them to this maximum security prison. We've all seen images of it. Kristi Noem was standing in front of it famously, all dolled up with the prisoners behind her, trying to flex her MAGA muscles, which is just the most inhumane, distasteful, Abu Ghraib type thing to do. These people are all bad people that are working for the Trump administration. And so they send this guy out there, and even the people in the Department of Justice, one of the lawyers of the Department of Justice admitted that he was wrongfully deported. And that guy who admitted that was then put away by Pam Bondi, basically demoted him or moved him off the case, and the guy had to pay for speaking the truth. You would think if a government of any country were to say, oh my gosh, we deported someone improperly, just by mistake, how easy would it be to get him on a plane and bring him back? Now, this guy's story is interesting because he came to America undocumented, but he was fleeing gang violence in El Salvador. And in 2019, Pam Bondi referenced the 2019 case. In 2019, he was trying to get political asylum. He was not given political asylum, but the judge said that this guy's life is in danger, and he gave him protection status to stay in America. And he said you cannot deport him specifically to El Salvador, where gangs were threatening his life. And what did America do? What did the Trump administration do? They sent him to a prison in El Salvador with other gang members, and he's sitting there. And by the way, the Trump administration, the members of the Trump administration, whether it's Donald Trump or it's Pam Bondi or it's Secretary Marco Rubio or it's Stephen Miller, you guys might have seen the video of them in the Oval Office just defending this, going, oh no, this is totally fine. The guy's a gang member. He's a terrorist, which he's not. There's no proof. That reporter asked Pam Bondi, show us the proof. Where is the proof that this guy is a gang member? They don't have it. And they're letting this guy just stay there. Meanwhile, the guy's got 3 kids and a wife who's an American citizen in America. He's got a 5-year-old kid who's going, where's dad? This is how cold-blooded these people are. They're cold-blooded, they are cruel, and the cruelty is the point. They want to get this across to you and me, that if we can do this to someone who was supposed to be here legally, we can do it to you. And that's where that second part comes in, where Jessica Tarlov was breaking it down, where Donald Trump was talking to the president of El Salvador, and he said, hey, get some more prisons ready for some homegrowns. I'm going to send some homegrown criminals to you. Now, once again, someone who's conservative might look at this and be like, well, why not? Let's send our criminals out of this country and not have them in this country. Well, first of all, that's unconstitutional. You cannot send an American citizen to a prison out of this country. And that, again, we go back to what they were doing with the internment camps in World War II with the Japanese. And we've seen that was one of the darkest moments of our history. And now they're saying, oh, we want to send these citizens over there. By the way, again, there might be some hardcore conservatives who are like, yeah, if we got murderers, we should send them to this El Salvadorian prison and let them take care of them there. Once again, not only is it unconstitutional, but secondly, we've famously seen how Donald Trump has moved the goalposts of what a criminal is. He calls reporters criminals. He calls late night talk show hosts criminals and people who are disloyal to America. So he's creating his own enemies list. So what's to stop you or me possibly from this video? They might take this video and go, well, he's a criminal because he was trying to speak against the administration. He criticized the administration. People are being asked at the border to show their phones and look at what kind of social media likes and stuff you have on your phone. It's a scary time. They're coming after you. And that's what leads us to what the judge was talking about, this constitutional crisis, because even the courts, the Supreme Court, his own court, where he's got 6-3 majority Republican, he's got all of these hardcore Republicans, including Clarence Thomas and Alito, 9-0, they said that the Trump administration has to facilitate his return. Now, the word facilitate is interesting because the Trump administration then was arguing, well, if he gets to the border, we'll let him in. If the president of El Salvador puts him on a plane, we'll let him in, but then we're going to deport him again, which is just nonsense. If this guy has not committed a crime, and this guy was in front of that judge in 2019 who said this guy has protection status in America, and he's got an American wife, and who knows, he might be even in the process of getting his citizenship, and he's working and he's just living a life. This is supposed to be the American dream. And Donald Trump said famously in the campaign, he said, no, we're not going to deport anybody who's here legally, and he was here leading a good life. And then at one point, a reporter had asked him, well, what if you deport somebody, by mistake? He goes, well, that's not a big deal. That's what he said. But the fact is, it is a big deal. It's a big deal to this guy's family. It's a big deal to other people who are of similar status with their immigration. It's a big deal to citizens who can then be said that, oh, we are criminals and they're going to deport us. That's the problem. So when the Supreme Court tells them 9-0 that you need to facilitate his return, Stephen Miller in the Oval Office said, they spin it. Stephen Miller said, well, the Supreme Court clearly took our side and said that we were right in deporting him. No, you're not. You can't just flip the Supreme Court's decision and go, no, we think what they're saying is that we did the right thing. The Supreme Court has said that you need to facilitate his return. And now the Trump administration is not listening to the Supreme Court. They're not listening to the justice system. And so that's where the constitutional crisis comes in. They've already got Congress and the Senate, because they're mostly Republicans and they do whatever the hell Donald Trump wants them to do. They've already got the executive branch and all the loyalists in the executive branch. There's no guardrails anymore. In Trump 1, at least, there was guardrails. There was guys like John Kelly and Mark Esper and these other people who were in the government who could say, Mr. President, we can't do what you're asking us to do. Famously, remember when Donald Trump, during the protests, wanted his Secretary of Defense to shoot into the crowds of protesters who were protesting peacefully? And that was when they said the Secretary of Defense was like, no, you can't do that, dude. You cannot do that. But this guy's got dictatorial tendencies. He's a full-time dictator. And he's implementing, by the way, what Project 2025 had outlined. They're trying to strengthen the executive branch so the executive branch can do whatever it wants. And we all know what's next. Once he starts deporting people that he considers criminals, or he starts having the IRS go after people like late night talk show hosts who he does not like. Currently, he's got the IRS going after Harvard University because Harvard University stood up to him and said, we are not going to change our policies because you want us to change our policies and you want us to have loyalty to your administration. So now he's had the IRS, he's weaponized the IRS to go after Harvard, or he wants to at least, which is, again, unconstitutional. So he's got a Department of Justice that he can weaponize any way he wants. And they spin it. They go, well, they weaponize it against me because you committed crimes, dude. You tried to overthrow democracy on January 6th. You stole classified documents. You have broken the law several times. You're a convicted felon, 34 counts. And you say, oh, the DOJ, Biden DOJ was weaponized against me. If you don't steal the candy, ain't nobody going to come after you. But you stole the candy, and you've gotten away with it right now. But we are now at a constitutional crisis, and it's time for people to rise up like they did in that Chuck Grassley town hall. It's time for people to wake up and realize you are next. No matter how much you might like this fool, you are next. All right? And the courts need to stand up to him, and the law firms who bowed down need to step up and stand up to him, and universities got to stand up to him. And it's time, because right now they really are. It's a push to give him the ability to do whatever he wants, and we know what comes after that. He adds a third term, and then it just becomes a dictatorship. So if you don't want a dictatorship, show up at your town halls, call your Congress members, call your senators, show up at the protests, and let them know, not on our watch, dude, not on our watch. Guys, I'm comedian Maz Jobrani. I've got a page right here on YouTube. Go over there, give it a follow. It's free. I post a lot of stand-up comedy. We all need a laugh these days, so go check it out and let me know in the comments that you found my page from Rebel HQ.